Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the 2011 reissue of Revell's Blueprint model released by Revell, and it's a skill level 3 kit for the 60th anniversary edition of the Atomic Cannon. It's a scale model kit number 85-7811, and this kit's barcode also indicates another number of 7818. Now, but the kit includes 300 pieces molded in gray plastic with a 7-member crew, instructions, and water slide decals. It features a positional cannon, articulating front and rear cabs, and note it's been issued under 7811, which was retained on the box and the instructions. Now, it's still readily available at online auctions and in larger hobby shops. And overall, when you're done, it's about 33 inches in length, 4 inches wide, and 5 inches high, but with the barrel in firing position, it's 14 inches high. Now, the Atomic Cannon, referred to as Atomic Annie, was a 280 millimeter caliber artillery piece developed in the 50s for the express purpose of delivering a 15 kiloton nuclear bomb. It was designed on the German K5 railroad gun, and it was deployed in both Europe and the Korean Peninsula. Here are the kit's contents, and it comes in 4 poly bags, but there's a lot of pieces in each one. The kit's decals are pretty good register, and they go on fairly easily. But you'll find that you need to use a little bit of a glossy surface to get them to adhere. Now, for the most part, Tamiya liquid cement was used for this build, with the exception of some super glue on some of the frame assembly and trunnions. But you should also remember to use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when you use any of the products you see or hear mentioned in the review. The construction starts with the forward deck assembly, and it consists of parts 97 to 100. So assemble those in this fashion. Now mount the forward deck to the right carriage frame, that's part 140, and ensure that you align the front deck properly to the carriage frame to avoid having a twisted carriage when you're done. Now, having the model unpainted at this point allows for a better gluing bond for the major pieces. Assemble the elevating gear on the left frame rail using parts 133 through 136, and I recommend adding drive gear number 138 at this time because it's difficult to do when called for in the instructions. But don't use a lot of glue on these parts because the mechanism works freely and you don't want to gum it up with some adhesive. Now add 2 part number 131 platform brackets to the frame, and then the left carriage frame is finished. Assemble the rammer parts, that's numbers 121 and 122, to the rear deck floor number 123. Install the rear deck to the rear deck floor, and positioning the rear deck is pretty important. If it's not in the proper position, it won't align with the carriage frame rails. And then the red circle here, that notch must be squared up. Here is an overhead view of the completed rear deck, and glue the rear deck assembly to the left carriage frame. And while the glue on the front and rear decks set up, we'll go on to the next assemblies. In this photo, it shows the bolster number 103 with the 3 wheels number 147 attached, and then the float pan built with parts 104 and 141. We have these sub-assemblies to put together now, and the gun cradle here with the red arrows indicates the seams that you'll have to sand smooth. And then the recoil tube there on the right uses parts 113 to 115, and the cradle housing parts 116 to 118 are assembled in this fashion. Now it's time to assemble the gun tube, and there's 16 inches, so it consists of parts 142 to 145A and 146, and you have to take your time gluing the 2 halves together to make sure that the tube aligns flush all along the length. When it's dry, paint the bottom of the 2/3 of the gun barrel silver, and then spray paint the top third an OD green, and use collar number 144 as your division line for the two colors. It came out pretty well with a little bit of sanding to even out those joints. We'll construct the cradle housing and the recoil buffers number 109 and the pins number 162 on top, and then the cradle rack 107 and the platform 108 are all assembled and installed on the bottom. Now the cradle rack or gear must be mounted square and firmly be able to have an operating elevating assembly mechanism. So make sure that that is correctly assembled so that you get a good smooth movement there. So here's another view of that cradle housing from the other side. The pins, which are the red arrows there, they're on the short left side of the photo, and then you just glue those in, and the buffers, the white arrows, the long right side there, they have square bosses that fit into the recesses. So you may need to do a little filing or sanding on the bosses to make sure they fit in there properly. Now ensure that all four pieces are straight, or the breech plate will not slide over the pins. It's pretty important in order to make the mechanism work. So if the pins aren't straight, you'll not be able to pull the gun tube in far enough to display the model in transport mode. So this shows on the right here a upside down view of the cradle housing with the cradle rack on top and the platform legs glued to that. Pull out the parts for the breech and assemble those, and that consists of the carrier part 88 and two eyelets parts 91 and the breech block 90. So this view shows the breech carrier sitting on the recoil pins mounted on the cradle assembly, and this is not glued into position so the barrel can retract. So slide the barrel through the cradle and then glue it to the breech carrier assembly. So get these parts out, and we will join the left and right carriage frame together, and ensure that you position the elevation drive shaft, that's part 137, and the drive gear 138 prior to joining the frames together there. So firmly clamp the carriage frame together and allow plenty of time for the glue to set. You may want to use some super glue for strength. Just make sure it's flat and straight. So after this main mechanism is put together, it's a good time to actually paint most of the pieces for the model. And I used a Tester's olive drab green to spray the entire frame, as you see there, and most of the carrier transport parts, with the exception of some of the working mechanisms. Build the long bottom housing, that's the axle, with parts 31, 2, and 3. And then, now while the instructions say to assemble two of these, be real careful, because you must have the frame of both transporters close by to determine the alignment of the three pieces for this assembly. So the directions show an arrow on parts 32 and 3, but if you follow that for both bottom housings, the axle will be backwards for the rear transport vehicle and the drive shaft won't line up. So I found out the hard way and had to reassemble. To build these correctly, you must install the torque converter, which is part 26, into the rear chassis, part 71, and then test fit the three pieces we talked about, 31, 2, and 3, to ensure that the notch in number 33 lines up with the hole in part 26. And once you have this done, you can glue these three parts together. Just don't mix up the front and rear transporters for later assembly. Now you have to repeat this procedure to build the rear axles of the vehicles using parts 30, 32, and 33. And then now this photo here at the top shows the rear axle assembly and complete. Now you can place the front axle and the spring on the front of the vehicle, and as you see here, and notice that the spring support parts 14 through 17 are mounted on the frame at the ends of the springs. Now we can build the tire sets, the wheel sets, and you'll have to build 6 tires per vehicle and 1 spare. The tires are plastic, but with some time and patience you can paint the insides drab and then detail the outer wheels. There's a ridge there, so they actually are pretty easy to paint. I used a rubber color, kind of a gloss black with some gray, some flats mixed in, and then went with random areas with some flat black then to contrast and give it a little wear look to it on the tread. Now we can simply install the axle assemblies, and prior to that, of course, these pieces are not olive drab green. These are some of the pieces that are different. They're a semi-gloss black, and of course the drive shafts are steel colored with some black unions there. So take a look at the detail here and go ahead and assemble this subassembly. Here's a detailed shot of the drive shafts. You'll install and align those as you construct the axle assemblies to the frame. Now using the axles, we'll assemble the wheel sets to the frame as shown here. Of course, it's a dually set in back, and front of that a single set. Just make sure that you've aligned the axles and the through backing plates so that you can assemble the dualies in the rear. Now with our platform established, we can turn our attention to the cab. So install cab floor number 2 and the seats, which are parts 5 and 6. But remember that the shifter goes between those. So I would assemble the shifter prior to putting both in. You can put one in or the other, or even start with the shifter and then align it after the seats are installed. Use a little slow setting glue there to do that. Now add the steering wheel, number 8, and the interior then cab section is done. I painted the seats brown with some tan highlights to give it the appearance of a little wear. And then the steering wheel, shifter, and the pedals are all semi-gloss black, and the cab floor is an OD green. This is an old kit design, and it did not come with window glass, so I just found an old piece of plastic packaging here to cut out some of this cellophane, like clear plastic window glass. So I used it to provide myself with a little more realism by cutting it out to fit the window frames, and used a little tack of glue in the edges to hold it into place inside the cab there, and then you have window glass in your model. And assemble the floor to the cab, and then the driver, which is painted up here. As you can see, he's got black boots, a leather jacket, green OD pants, and then flesh for the face, of course. And glue him into position as he's looking out and back in the vehicle. When I began to construct the cab to the chassis, the step under the door took a little minor filling to get it to fit flush with the running boards there. So you can see in this picture there's a slight gap under the cab, and I couldn't file enough off the cab side to get it to really flush, so I had to use a filler there to make it appear normal. Now we can place the engine screen, the cover, into position using parts 52, 58, and 59, and then the muffler is part number 56. Now, if I hadn't mentioned it before, make sure that you scrape any paint off before you join the parts to get a good glue bond. Add the spare tire carrier number 67 with the spare tire attached, and now you probably noticed from before that this one's a little different. This wheel is not interchangeable with the vehicle wheels because of the mounting, so make sure that you get the right one and that should be the one that you have left to put this into place. The 50 caliber machine guns are optional for the build, but if you use them, mount parts 149 and 50 there around the ring, which is 148, and paint it a silver or a steel color so that it will slide around the ring. And then insert machine gun number 152 and the gun fork 151 and insert the fork into the mount. Now position the mount on the roof centered over the passenger seat and glue that into place. Now we can work on some of those front end parts, and to build the front bumper, that's part 50, you're going to soak the bumper decal into some warm water, and then when it slides off you can place that onto the bumper, ensuring that the holes in the decal line up with the holes in the bumper. And notice how the stripes are are aligned. If the decal is upside down, the holes will be off from the clevises. So parts 35 there's two of them, and the pintle 34, along with the cable guide. They will be positioned with some of the holes. So coat the decal with some some setting solution, and then allow it to set and dry. And then the mirrors, parts number 24, there's two of them, and the spotlights 36 and 7. And of course the machine gun was previously mounted to the cab of the roof. So get the winch out from the kit and install it on the right side, and then the rear bumper, that's using parts 51, and then 35 there's two of those, and 57 there's two of those. And make sure you pay attention to the orientation of the bumper, because it should only fit one way, and you don't want your hooks, parts number 57 there, to be upside down. So following that construction, you can add the decals to the kit as shown in your instruction set and here in the photo, and detail the lights. The headlights have a silver color or a white, and then some yellow and red for the turn signals, etc. And with that done, your transporter in front is finished. Let's construct the rear transport vehicle, and it's built in much the same way as the front one, except that the cab is on the back of the transporter and it's facing the transporter and the cannon. So here we install the front and rear axles as we did, and they were built in step 7 onto the chassis there, and at the right is a top view of the same chassis platform. Now we can assemble the cab and the driver, which are built identical to the front with the exception of the headlight panel, that's part 72, which isn't used on the rear transporter. To mount the driver, the only part of him that I was able to glue was his right foot to the floorboard. So scrape the paint off there and make sure you use some good strong glue to set him into place. Make sure that you use the roof of the cab back there to ensure that the head of your driver is not interfering with that fit. Make sure you move him over enough to keep him inside the cab and not have a roof fit issue later on. We can finish up this rear vehicle transport by building the engine screen using parts 75, 81, and 2, and then the muffler 77 like in the front, and mount those to the chassis. Then attach the completed cab to the chassis, and once again you may have to file the mounting tabs to get the cab back far enough to be flush with the engine cover there. You may also want to detail those pieces shown with the red arrows here with a steel colored paint, including the strap on the fuel tank. At the transport vehicle here, attach the front bumper, number 73 with the clevises and the pintles, and then construct the rear bumper, 74, using decal number 4 for this one. And again, with the clevises and pintles, pay attention to the orientation of the decal to the bumper to make sure that it fits over those parts. As we move into final assembly, we're going to take a little time out here to finish up some of the accessory parts. So we'll build 2 rounds of the ammo and ammo carts constructed with coloration somewhat like this. The shells are aluminum and the projectiles are OD green. And then construct the 2 ammunition carts using the frames 157 and the wheels 155 and 6. There's 4 of those for the 2 carts. I'll paint the frame wheels OD green and the tires rubber color and assemble that for the sub-assemblies. Now the crew members, they are all fully assembled. You just need to detail those with a small paintbrush. And the far left here shows the commander, and the 2 center section here shows the 2 ammo haulers kind of bent over. And then photo here shows the 2 crew members that they don't stand on their own, so you have to sand off the bottom of the shoes for an angle to get them to do that, or glue them to a platform for your diorama. So just as in the front, we're going to take time now to place the decals on the rear cab. You can see the red pointers here. And that includes the star in the opposite door that you can't see here. And then add the removable rear lifting fork, that's the white arrow, that connects the cannon to the transporters. And don't forget the decals that go on the cannon and elevator there, so you can see those in position. Paint the cranks, the tie downs, the rails, and the barrel heads with a metallic silver. And with the cabs removed, the cannon will be raised into the firing position. Here's a view of the cannon from the back side, the opposite side here in the firing position. And note that this shows the two foldable steps that are they're folded down in position there. Install the removable lifting fork to the front transporter. You can see that in position here at this time. So just for fun, I mocked up the crew members here, bringing in Atomic Annie's ammunition. And as you can see, with just a few more items and a platform base, this will make a great diorama. Attach the lifting forks to the cannon to prepare the unit for transport. So now place the forks onto the transporters, and it's in position for transport. Now we'll do some transport specific movement here. So slide the breech off the pins for the transporting position, and then the atomic cannon is ready to move. Well, there you have it. This kit is complete. And this iconic model from Revell was reintroduced from Revell, and we have to thank them for that. It's in pretty good shape, but there will be some seam lines and some test fitting that you'll need to do, and maybe a little bit of filing here and there to get the pieces to match up. But all in all, construction isn't too difficult, although I would say this is only fit for an intermediate builder. And once you're finished, it is a gorgeous looking model for your display shelf, although you'll need a wide one because it's a long kit. But nonetheless, you won't find these being made anymore. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope that you like this step-by-step premium model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and at our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.